call the meeting to order at 6:04. Please rise. Pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So, presentation of FY 2024 financial audit report. Zio Boccelli, thank you for coming. Just be careful, you will take off when you sit on the chair. That's my warning to everyone. I warn them once, and then after that, you're on your own.
Good evening, honorable members of the select board, Manager Layden, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Terenzio Boccelli. I'm a representative from Roselli Clark and Associates, certified public accountants with offices in Woburn, Massachusetts, and one right up the street in Hopefield, Massachusetts. This was the first year of a 2-year revised audit engagement. A revision was needed because the town expended more than $750,000 of federal funds in fiscal year 2024 and is expected to do so again in fiscal year 2025. Therefore, the scope of the audit changed. So when you spend more than $750,000 in a given year of federal funds, it triggers what's called a single audit. That threshold is increasing to $1 million in 2026. So the audit had to be performed instead of under auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America. It had to be also with the auditing standards issued by the Comptroller of the United States of America. So we were engaged to perform a financial statement audit. In summary, the objective of a financial statement audit is to opine on the fairness of the financial statements and the related disclosures. This was not a forensic audit, which is a separate assurance agreement that is quite popular in today's society. We see a lot of it with DOJ and whatnot. And that's a total separate engagement that's focusing on waste, fraud, and abuse, or whatever laser focused particular activity. You should have received what's referred to as a required communications letter, which is 3 pages long, dated February 4th.
I didn't provide that to the board. It's now posted on the website. I didn't have that originally.
Okay. So I'm just going to briefly summarize this because this could put you to sleep. Management, which includes the folks in this room, are responsible for the selection and the employment of the appropriate accounting policies that are used to develop the financial statements. Accounting estimates are an integral part of the financial statements prepared by management, and they're based on management's knowledge and experience about past and current events and assumptions based on future events. The most sensitive estimates affecting the town's financial statements pertain to the net pension liability, which is actuarially determined by the Worcester Regional Retirement System, the net OPEB liability, which you folks have your own actuary that does that work, as well as your own independent estimate for the allowance for doubtful accounts. And the disclosures surrounding those estimates are quite significant within the financial statement. Happy to report that we did not encounter any significant difficulties in dealing with management and completing our audit. I'm also happy to report that we did not have any disagreements with management with respects to any accounting, reporting, or any auditing. We requested certain representations from management, and it's referred to as a representation letter dated January 30th, 2025, the date of our audited financial statements. Again, the complete content of that letter. The audited financial statements themselves are quite robust. They are 56 pages long. And those were issued on February 4th. I'm sorry, on January 30th, 2025, with an unmodified or clean opinion. The audited financial statement consists of several key sections. The government-wide financial statements present the financial condition and results of operation of the town as if on a full accrual basis, as if it was a public entity like a Raytheon or an EMC. And in that situation, we have the town recognizes all of its capital assets, this building, as well as the associated debt, its pension liabilities, its OPEB liabilities, as well as the elimination of the deferrals on its receivables. We have the fund financial statements, which are modified accrual. Those most closely resemble the internal financial statements that you folks are probably running your town on. There's the proprietary funds financial statements, which are used for your water and sewer operations. Those are also on full accrual, and those are based on the operations of the two activities, your enterprise funds, which are funded by user fees. We have what's called a fiduciary fund financial statements for your OPEB trust, your private purpose trusts. Those are funds that are held by the town, but are not for the town's benefit, for outside benefits. In the case of OPEB, it's going to be for future retirees. For the private purpose trust, it's primarily scholarships and for town residents, principally like needy purposes and welfare purposes. We have the notes to the financial statements, and then this required supplementary information with respect to the pension plan, the OPEB, and budget act. When we look at the full accrual financial statements, the town's net position increased $3.7 million to nearly $67.1 million. Again, this method of accounting reports all of the long-term assets, eliminates those deferred receivables, brings on the long-term debt, pension, and OPEB. But that's not the basis that you folks are running your operations. That's not what DOR evaluates, and even S&P, well, they'll look at your OPEB, they'll look at your pension, but they're really looking at your modified accrual. So we'll spend some more time talking about that. The general fund is your primary fund. It's the checkbook, per se, of the town. The annual budget is legally adopted by the general fund and approved by the town meeting in each spring. Unspent and unencumbered general fund balances lapse and revert to the unassigned fund balance or free cash each year. Or unspent funds from continuing appropriations, such as capital articles, are carried forward one year to the next. The audited financial statements report the general fund on a GAAP basis. This is going to slightly differ from what you see on a day-to-day basis because GAAP requires the general stabilization funds to also be reported in your general fund. There's also going to be some timing differences. General fund. There's an RSI schedule all the way in the back of the financial statement on pages 55 and 56 that report on your actual budgetary amounts. Those are your statutory amounts that you do report to the Department of Revenue. The actual column does match your statutory fund, general fund, that you did report to the Massachusetts Department of Revenue. There might be some classification differences, but the total revenues, the total expenditures, and the transfers are all going to be consistent. In terms of budget to actual performance, the town's fiscal year 24 financing sources were $1.9 million greater than its expenditures. The town carried over $3.6 million of articles and encumbrances into fiscal year 25. Those were mostly used for roadways and heavy equipment. Actual statutory-based revenues exceeded budget by just over $2 million, while expenditures and carried over articles were of more than $1.1 million, lower than budget. In terms of budgetary flexibility, the reserve ratio was over 32%. S&P would rate that quite strong. S&P currently rates your debt as AA+. Now, S&P has recently changed their rating methodology. We haven't evaluated what that means to you. You may want to reach out to Unibank because they can give you a better idea as to what that means. Folks have a very, very strong financial position. I'm not sure how that's going to affect you, but a lot of communities that are really on the bubble, this is that new change philosophy, rating methodology is going to affect them. It may not affect you at all. In addition to the general fund, the town reports a CPA fund, community preservation, and ARPA grant fund as major governmental funds. If we look back at 2023, we reported the community center as a major fund, but at the close of 2023 it was essentially completed, so it was no longer necessary to report it as a major. The CPA fund expended roughly $266,000 in its general operations and for capital items, and another $271,000 for debt service, which I believe was part of the renovation of this facility itself. The ARPA fund expended about $1.4 million in 2024, which was primarily for public work projects as well as for premium pay. And there was about $950,000 that was carried over into this current fiscal year. Presumably, those were all obligated by December 31st of 2020. And then the non-major funds is kind of the catch-all for all the remaining revolving funds, capital projects as trust funds. And that total fund that total fund balance was about $6.1 million. The audited financial statements include debt service tables that detail your 2025 through 2029 expected debt service payments, as well as what those debt service payments look like 5-year increments thereafter. And if you turn to pages 39 and 40 of the audited financial statements, you can see those in detail. In addition to long-term debt, the town faces significant obligations in terms of long-term personnel costs related to pensions and OPEBs, just like everyone else in the state. The town is a member of the Worcester Regional Retirement System, so you really don't have any control of your pension obligations and how that's controlled, other than save, creating a pension reserve fund to control the effect of future appropriation increases. You represent roughly 1.1% of the entire appropriation of the Worcester Retirement System. Based on their latest valuation, they were about 50% funded. It's up 48%. They're currently going through an audit as we speak. We would expect that that's going to go up slightly. They're 100% invested in what's called PRIT. PRIT did about a 9.1% return last year. So I would expect, that 50% might go to 51 or 52% funding. It all depends on what their actuarial assumptions are going to be. But statutorily, every pension system in the state is required to be fully funded by 2040. And all of these schedules, the funding schedules, are really set to be fully funded by 2036. So I believe the Worcester Regional Retirement System has a pretty aggressive funding schedule to get there. You're seeing that every year as well as the budgeting process. Moving on to OPEB, you folks are actually quite well funded for your size. Yep, you're about 23% funded. Your actuary that you use does roughly 40% of the state. So I would say it's a pretty good representative sample size of the state. Given your size, that puts you in the 75th percentile state. So we entered fiscal year 2025, which is only 27 days left, with about $4.2 million of free cash and stabilization. I want to caution everybody about some of the risks that you face. Phishing scams, significant risk. We did spend the time with the Treasurer's office because that's the office that gets named. Anybody's trying to make changes in any type of payment methodology to do their diligence. You're a small town. If Joe is sending an email that I want to change the way my direct pay is being made, that should really be done in person. It should not be done via email because that's how they always get paid. Folks in Franklin got hit with that right at the onset of COVID. It was all done via email. Network security, a significant matter. I'm seeing a lot of folks getting nailed with ransomware. So, with the network security. That includes the formal aspect. What else?
You went right through it though. Do you have any questions, Pauline?
No, I went through some of it. Not all. They want to know about the
When you go through the notes to the financial statements, there is requirements to disclose a certain risk. These are all standard credit risk, custodial credit risk, concentration risk. These are all very, very standard risks that must be disclosed. Your investments are very consistent with, do you folks use Bartholomew? I don't know. Bartholomew knows what the permissible investment. Yeah, look up the state image.
I had just a comment first. I apologize for being late. And also, it's nice to hear so much sort of, we know there's a lot of headwinds, but when we have something like our funding, 75th percentile for the state, it just is reassuring because we've sort of made a little bit of an extra effort. We haven't gone sort of full bore at it, but I think we've done enough to make a difference. And it's nice to see that reflected in these kinds of reports. Thank you.
I was here when there was zero.
Yeah.
A long time. And the first set of funding was like pulling teeth.
Yeah.
Yes.
So folks have made.
That's good to hear.
And for the board, I mentioned something about the management letter. All these documents are on the town's website. Well, it's under the finance department. So you have not only the financial report, but you have the most recent management letter, and then that single audit is what Trenzor was mentioning about the federal audit.
You're going to see in that single audit, it's going to ask, are you a high risk auditee? It's going to say yes. The reason why it says yes is you have not been audited in the past. So, and you'll be a high risk auditee again in this upcoming, because you have to be a low risk audit. You have to be audited for 2 straight years before you consider it. So that should not cause any concern for the general public. We were last year's single audit, but that doesn't cause any concern.
Any other questions? Great presentation. We appreciate you coming in and thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you.
Have a great night. Michael, you're on.
Evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Mike Antonellis, Director of Land Use and Inspectional Services. So quite the block of the agenda in front of me. One by one. I did this because I was feeling empty-handed. I printed you all out.
Just in case.
The Community Preservation Plan and the Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan. But tonight, I don't have a detailed presentation of those plans. I was kind of talk about them generally, highlight a couple specifics, and talk about the need for the plan and what they sought to accomplish. The CPC plan. So town partnered with the CMRPC to provide these 2 plans: Community Preservation Plan and an Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan. Both of these plans serve for the purpose of a reference guide for the board members, the trustees, regarding, and a reference guide for the public as well regarding the rules and responsibilities. The Community Preservation Plan is referenced within the Community Preservation Act. It states that the CPC shall study the needs of the community, involve stakeholders, that's been provided in the detailed report. It then says that the study should be adopted at a public hearing. So tomorrow night, the CPC will that's when they're scheduled for their public hearing for that document. And they will vote on that tomorrow night for formal adoption. It's already on the CPC's webpage. So if anybody wanted to take a look ahead of the public hearing, they have comments, they can, are welcome to show up to that meeting and provide comments to the CPC. So over the last year, CPC has been working with CMRPC to refine that draft document. The need for this document, the major components of the plan was to, 1, create a well-defined process for evaluating applications for funding. to also provide a reference guide, like I said, for the committee members. And 3, to creating goals to assist with the evaluation of each individual funding request to help implement the town's longer-term goals. So as a part of the study, CMRPC met with focus group that pulled from a variety of different perspectives that were all intended to touch upon the different facets of CPC funding, right? Saying historic and open space and recreation. The plan provides an overview of the CPA funding and obviously touches on each one of those different aspects of the funding. The plan provides a detail regarding key responsibilities, such as like we're going over tonight, the development of this plan, soliciting feedback from boards and commissions when deciding on funding requests in and of themselves, and record keeping. The plan describes the voting requirements to recommend the funding participation. It describes what types of activities are typically allowed through CPA funding and what is prohibited. So after a review of all of the available documentation related to planning documents and discussions with the focus group members and with the CPC themselves, the plan provides goals regarding 3 major target areas, like I said, housing, recreation, historic. Some of the examples, historic. One of the goals, just for example, is for historic, it says increase recognition of historic significance, which is to enhance advocacy and pursue comprehensive state and federal recognition for Upton's historical assets. There's one example from the many goals that were listed for historic. From housing, I just picked one. I preserve existing housing by focusing on maintaining and improving existing housing and affordability to help residents stay in Upton. Obviously, many of these goals would be in tandem with the Affordable Housing Action. Open space to protect and preserve critical natural resources, from the recreation section of it to implement the recreation plans like the 4 Parks plan and increase accessibility. All of these goals will be used to evaluate or should be used to evaluate funding requests when they come to the CPC. So for individually, what goals does this check off when they're reviewing? So another need was, as such a major goal of this plan was to provide a more defined process for evaluating these requests of funding. The plan provides an application review section that provides basically funding, so that not only will they have that, they'll also have tell before them should they choose to reference it. As well as a template for an actual application to be submitting to the CPC. So it's been, it's certainly working what they're doing now, but this provides more formality to it. And it should be easier for record keeping in the future. So that's just quickly going over the CPC Community Preservation Plan, the Affordable Housing Action Trust Plan. As I mentioned briefly, the Affordable Housing Trust is the main entity that's committed to obtaining and providing affordable housing within the town. And expands on the goals that were identified in the housing production plan. So this is like the logical next step from the housing production plan. As with the community preservation plan, this plan engaged a number of stakeholders to help inform the goals and actions of the plan. The need of this plan, those goals that were provided in the housing production plan, as I mentioned, were broken down further to create more actionable items. The housing production plan, those goals were a bit more broad and overarching. This document sought to break down those goals and set action items to achieve those goals. So it did that. An example of that was the housing production plan. Plan said, build local capacity to promote affordable housing. That was sort of a general goal. An action item that comes out of this document in pursuit of that goal is encourage staff and board members to participate in educational training about. So actually gives, us a tangible thing to go do in order to achieve that goal. So those, and all of those individual action items, obviously there's a slew of action items that were result, as just an example. Those action items were put into a 5-year plan and differentiated as short-term, medium-term, long-term. So like within the next 1 to 2 years, 2 to 3 years, 4 to 5 years, because this is intended to be a 5-year. Examples of those short-term actions was to extend the working knowledge of, this plays off what I just mentioned, extend the working knowledge of Affordable Housing Trust members through seminars and conferences. This is something that's already being done. Well, some of our trust members have already attended more about how their communities are achieving this goal. The goal of affordable housing. Medium-term action, offer pre-development funding to ease development processes in Upton, as we know the importance of this through what we've learned. Long-term action items, work with the planning board to ensure zoning bylaws align with the affordable housing goals. As I mentioned, it's a 5-year plan, so it's listed out in matrix form in that document with these action items. The plan also provides a 5-year funding goal, which identifies how much funding the trust should aim to retain in order to pursue its goals. That was a sort of a difficult task to identify, just because there isn't a lot to draw from as far as the trust, right? They started a while ago as a formal group and didn't start to really take action until like 2018, and they were a bit dormant, so there wasn't a lot for that, but. There is a funding plan in place that identifies roughly what the trust should be keeping on hand in pursuit of its goals. So the need, it was most importantly, much like with the community preservation plan, this plan exists as a reference guide to the trustees to assist their decision making. I really tried to hammer that with the CPC, as use these as guides. These plans should be used as a guide when we're referencing any new steps or evaluating applications of any sort that go to the applications more to the CPC. And as I said, the CPC is already uploaded to the webpage, and the Affordable Housing Trust is, this one is adopted. It is not a draft, so that's a final plan. And that is on the trust webpage. So that's all I had for an overview of the plans.
Just a couple of things. So have we done these plans before?
No, these are the first.
These are the first time. So congratulations to Upton and you all for pulling that all together. And I know CMRPC did a lot and had a lot to do with that. Obviously, there's a lot that goes on in our local administration and a lot that we're trying to accomplish. What's your confidence level that sort of this is, like, how realistic is this 5-year plan for Affordable Housing Trust if we look at it every year for the next 5 years as a way to track our progress?
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's kind of like, yeah, this is ideal, maybe we could do it, but it would really have to get prioritized? Or do you feel like, you know what, we've got the people, we've got the resources, we've got the attention to get this done and we can execute on it?
We definitely focused in on actions and goals that we thought were more obtainable. Yeah, we didn't want to have really lofty goals.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's like adding whatever it was, 33 affordable housing units over the next 5 years.
yeah, and that was based on sort of what has been accomplished throughout.
So does that seems like something reasonable?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, that could be a combination of, not necessarily Affordable Housing Trust singular action on behalf of, on their part. It could be working with developers, to achieve it. I mean, I'm sure, day one after the safe harbor status goes away, you'll have a 40B application, right? Unless the economy is really such that it would not support it, right? Yeah. I'm pretty confident in saying that that'll happen. And you might even have a 40B application before then, and then this board would have the opportunity to decide whether or not you want to entertain. Is this something you can work with a developer to achieve that goal? in the meantime, that you think there'd be enough community support behind. You know, those are things, those will be options that'll come available. So I do think that's a long-winded way of saying, yeah, I think they're mostly achievable. And to go off of something else you said, I mean, it is a 5-year plan, and these are intended to be plans that are revisited and reevaluated. So like,
As we go.
yeah, they should be living documents, not necessarily, okay, 5 years is up and now we're just done. We should revisit them and update them accordingly, figure out what has worked, what hasn't, and keep going.
If I could just add one other thing. These are specifically action plans. You know, we did the housing production plan in 2023, which is by Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities. That's what gave us our housing certification. These two action plans are really intended to help the Affordable Housing Trust and CPC focus in on those tasks to then achieve the goals within those larger plans. So that's where these are a little bit more reachable, because it basically is more of a roadmap, which then is a little easier then to update and revisit and identify if we didn't track on things, what can we do to them?
That's great. Awesome. And please know my question is only rooted in if there's something that you needed from us as a board to help support the great work, we would want to offer that. So that's thank you. If there's anything we can do for you to help make these more achievable. You're good. That's great.
I was thrilled to hear it. They're living and breathing documents, because when you get a report and you shelve it, it does no good.
Yes.
So the fact that it's going to be a working document was good to hear. You've lived it. I've lived it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Michael. And now we're on to grants.
It's gonna get us some money.
Yes. Hello again. So before you tonight, looks like Joe included just a sample form from the Community One Road application. So tonight I was asking for the select board's approval to submit these applications on your behalf. I'll start with the first. So the first one, zoning bylaw and subdivision rules and regulations update. So CMRPC, we were working with CMRPC. We got direct technical local assistance funding through them to do what they refer to as a zoning diagnostic, where they'll look through our zoning bylaw and basically figure out what isn't working in regards to, you know, if it says something here and it says something else somewhere else in the document, right? We want the document to be coherent and to, there's inconsistencies. We don't want those to exist and should be removed. So it's more of a, you know, looking at it, it's more of a language update with, you know, possibly the potential for including, like, we don't want to take big policy swings when there has been a substantial planning exercise to support those substantial policy changes, right? So I don't even want to mention examples because I don't want to scare people, but but for instance, like we have the Affordable Housing Trust Action Plan here before us, which is based on the housing production plan. You know, some of the recommendations that might come out would be including things that were called out within these two documents, right? And that'll be a report that's produced, that's provided to the planning board for their consideration to make recommendations. So we'll be utilizing that information when it's available in pursuit of this to provide the actual language update to the zoning bylaw to make it a document that's a bit more clear, doesn't provide and create confusion to those who need it and to use it. You know, not just residents and homeowners, but developers as well. People who are trying to navigate the process. And I'd say the same goes for the subdivision rules and regulations portion of that too. So more pointedly, the subdivision rules and regulations are out of date. There have been several instances that we've come across just old references to datum that are not the current engineering standards, things like that. So a good opportunity to update those. Obviously, there's been changes within Mass General law, such as ADUs. Be a good opportunity to bring somebody on board to evaluate these and say, should we be planning for subdivisions with the inclusion of ADUs, since that's now a by right use, those sorts of things. Does that impact our rules and regulations? So, but yeah, no, that's a more pointed, with the engineering standards, right? So that one is being prepared by CMRPC. So they sent myself, Joe, a memorandum of understanding, so that they are working with us to prepare this grant application. Obviously, I've been working with them in preparation of the grant language and of the scope of work and everything like that. And there is a match, a fund match, but that's not going to come from cash in the form of money from the town. The town's match will be in the form of DLTA assistance, which is one of the programs I mentioned earlier. That's through CMRPC, as well as the planning assistance, local planning assistance, LPA hours that they provide to the planning board. So those are kind of almost, I don't want to say in kind, because the grant technically doesn't accept in kinds, but it accepts that form. So that'll be the match that the town provides in pursuit of that grant. Before I move on to the next two, are any questions?
Great.
CMRPC planning grants. This one is not due tomorrow, so I have until July to get this one in. So I'm working with CMRPC on this one as well. For design guidelines for multifamily development. That is actually one of the noted action items within that plan right there. And so what was driving this was not just the new MBTA zone that we have here in town, but that is certainly a driver to get design guidelines for that district, so that a development can, match the aesthetic that the town would prefer to have, right? Especially for multifamily housing. But taking that opportunity to identify not just for that district, because sort of taking not much of a leap of faith to assume that we would want the same, the town, the same for any multifamily that gets proposed in town. As we know through 40B applications, there's the waiver process that they can request through the zoning board to bypass local zoning and things like that. This helps us put it in a better position if you ever get a 40B that maybe isn't the best. And say, hey, we already have these guidelines in place. Then they would have to specifically ask for a waiver, but it puts you in a better position with it not having them at all.
Right, it sort of makes it feel that they're not just reactionary, like, oh, we just don't like your design. It's like, we've established standards that we all agree to. We're not just doing this because we have a problem with your design.
Exactly. And you do, the town does allow multifamilies in certain districts within towns, and those don't currently have subdivisions, right? So that's why. And the last one is I'm working with John Chu, building commissioner, on this one, the Mass Office of Disability Grant. So it's a maximum award of $250,000. I imagine we're proposing to make improvements to the Ristine for the bathroom in there. And John provided some schematics for that. There's currently 2 bathrooms, so we'd be proposing, because of the limited space that's available in order to achieve ADA compliance, make that into 1 bathroom and make the necessary changes. So that's would be one portion of it. And then it's the Ramsey building at Kiwanis Beach. The bathrooms and the upstairs of that. The fact that it's upstairs presents its own challenge, but I would be looking to solve some of the issues with regards to access in the bathrooms within that building. Even just as simple as like the step into the threshold of the doors within that building present things like that.
And they can't use the second floor at all right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Would this achieve the goal of having that second floor accessible or in just in part?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think that would be that would be substantial. I'm not sure the building could support, or no, it could support, but the funding available probably wouldn't support that. But we are looking to make via those other changes to assist in different ways to achieve this. And then, no,
Okay, sorry, so it's not restrooms on the second floor.
I'm sorry. Did I say second floor? Yeah, I'm sorry. Restrooms on the first floor.
Oh,
Excuse me, sorry.
I got you. All right.
I was thinking of the second floor because I couldn't get in there to look at
I totally with you. I get it now. I was just.
Yeah.
I was confused why we were investing.
it. That makes sense why you were confused. Yes.
Really?
Could be a part of the long-term strategy, but I.
Yeah.
Just gotta clarify.
We were getting there. We got it. I got first floor. All good.
And then a purchase of 88 bleachers for the soccer field. And then, so I don't have quotes yet for that work. John is working with some of his colleagues that he knows to get quotes on those things. So that's not due until the 13th. So I have a little bit of time. Again,
We're getting there, step by step.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate all your hard work.
thanks.
Busy running.
Have a good night.
There's three motions right here. I would like all three. Yes.
Okay, for motion 2-1, move that the board vote to authorize the town manager to apply for funding under the One Stop Road Grant Program for the update to the town of Upton zoning bylaws and subdivision regulation.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
I move that the board vote to authorize the town manager to apply for funding under the CMRPC Planning Grant Program for the development and design guidelines for multifamily development.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
Motion 2-3, move that the board vote to authorize the town manager to apply for funding under the Massachusetts Office of Disability Grant Program for ADA improvements to the Pristine Building, Ramsey Building, and ADA bleachers at Quonset.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Mike.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks.
Joe, your report. Maureen, I have to get a copy so I can see it, but.
No, I have some notes here and then I'll.
Okay.
This morning, we had our monthly department head meeting, and one of the first thing we had was a kickoff meeting with the Collins Center. Collins Center was engaged to do our 6-year capital plan update. We received $30,000 in funding from community conference for that early fall 2020. So they presented a summary of what they're going to be doing. Presented the inventory forms, sort of talked about the goals and sort of like rough timelines. We are shooting for a timeline that will give us a capital plan to then plug into the FY27 capital plan calendar, which means we're having basically a plan prepared for middle of later on. We also last week last week we held a kickoff meeting with Criterion engineers for Holy Eagles. We set a date of June 12th for basically a physical inspection of the building. They're going to be bringing in laser scanners to get basically a 3D plan of the building so they can document any changes. All right. implement. We're also gonna meet, just make sure everyone's on the same board as far as objectives. And specifically, one of the reasons we set the 12th, and we're gonna be meeting there with staff as well, is to talk about painting and those things, to try to focus in getting that, whatever information is needed to get an assessment on what would need to be done to identify if there are obstacles to proceeding with that painting work this season. I get that out of the way ASAP, since we know that's something that has been people asking about. That same day, we had a kickoff meeting with CHA. They're the firm that's doing the town master plan. And we've engaged them to do the engineering for the retaining wall and dugout at Kiwanis Beach for the softball field. We've had to close the dugout, put up tape, and put up fencing to prevent access from that area. It's a safety hazard. So our hope is later on this year, we can have engineering specifications to go out to bid, secure funding at town meeting to do this improvement. Work on the town hall parking lot is going to start next week. Today, if anyone was driving by, they may have seen surveyors out here putting out control points and also marking pavement for some of the radius. Later on in the agenda, we're going to be considering a hold harmless agreement with church in order to allow for the public to use the parking lot. All staff on the street. Moving on to DPW, we've had a couple instances where the light poles at the community center and what we're going to be doing is painting the bases bright yellow and a little
shell. He was looking at you.
Let me put these, I got you barriers. You can put fun to
Yeah.
protect them.
There you go.
Which is why I was snickering, I'm sorry. Right, might be better than yellow. There we go.
But we're also just a little bit above them. We're going to just have some reflectors on. So that's, you're going to see that over the next couple of weeks. We've had 3 incidents in the last 9 months where vehicles have hit them.
Getting pretty good.
Yeah. Yes. Also, the board may recall, it was the end of the summer, early fall in 2024. Dennis had come before the board with a culvert grant program that we applied for and received funding. That assessment work is completing, and we're going to be meeting mid-June with staff to sort of go over some of those results. Coming out of that program, they're going to do engineering for 3 of the top culverts that need addressing. So we'll bring that back in front of the board so we can talk about those projects. But engineering, you're talking, that's easily a couple $100,000 worth of work that we're getting through this. So we're working on trying to maintain control of the new lights that were installed up at the Kiwanis soccer fields. They were left on overnight. Because of the accessibility of the switches, our thought is that people came on field later at night, turned them on, they never got turned off. So we're going to be looking at either putting it in the building, which then the leagues have access to that building, or providing some other lockbox to make sure that only those that are authorized lights. Street sweeping is half done and around town, and we're starting catch basin cleaning as well. People may have seen that the roadside mower is also out, so we've started that. We are addressing complaint areas first, and then we'll get more into a traditional. So police staffing, we had retirement of Lieutenant Benjamin, and now we're dealing with sort of filling some of those vacancies and some of those shifts. Later on this week, I'm going to be emailing the board on recommendations of appointment for 2 officers, one of which we'll be sending to the police academy in the fall. We're just waiting for background checks and all that. So we know that they're actually someone to then forward to the board. As Mike mentioned, our planning assistant planner started yesterday. Department is fully staffed. At a previous meeting, I let the board know that John Achu had been certified by the state as a conditional building commissioner. What that actually allows for us to do is tell Ron DeSantis, he had been our interim building commissioner, because for some permitting activity, you need a certified building commissioner to be able to sign off on. We had originally, as part of the FY26 budget, when we first started the budget, we had him on in some temporary form almost the whole year. Then we revised it to just do 6 months. At the end of this month, we're able to actually thank him for all of his hard work. But John, because he's gone through his testing so quickly and gotten certification, we can actually stand on our own now. And so it's really, with Michael, John, and Ron's help, been really great to be able to really support John in getting the licenses and the tests that he needed to become certified building commissioner.
That's awesome. Good.
Planning board has seen a little tick in activities. So I previously let the board know East Street Estates definitive subdivision was submitted. They also got a new preliminary subdivision plan for 130 South Street. This is going to be a 4-lot subdivision. This is a property that previously was in front of the ZBA for a large lot frontage reduction, which was denied, and they've come back with a preliminary plan that would be submitted on the subdivision rules and regulations. ZBA has also seen, after a couple months of not having any activity, they have 3 special permit applications, including one at 3 Centennial Court. This is actually Russell Ave, Russell Court, where there's the old garages that really supported the mill buildings. One was torn down, and they're going to be tearing down another, and they are seeking approval to build a 5-unit townhouse in that location. This will require some review by town staff because of the rights of way issues that the board is aware of with Russell Court, with one of the residents seeking assistance to try to identify access and improving that roadway and that little span between Russell Ave coming in and then Centennial. So we do have to work with them, because at least this applicant has engaged a surveyor to do some work that we'd actually have to do. So we're gonna sit down with them and sort of go over the history and try to identify some of the challenges in that area. Because even as part of this, realistically, fire department is gonna have to review this plan, access, how we do improvements. It's all gonna come out during that process.
Is there something, if I may, sorry, question just briefly. Is that something the Affordable Housing Trust would want to get involved with? In terms of making those affordable units? Or
That is the potential, because it was just submitted,
Yeah.
and will also require approval with the planning board. That's something that we can touch base. They're just below the threshold for the inclusionary zone. So there are opportunities that we can try to work with them to see if we can get.
So it's a percentage. The percentage that they go by that becomes affordable.
Yeah.
Would be like 10%.
It's after, so it comes in 1 unit per every 7 units, and then it does sort of step up after that, depending on the total number of units.
I think we do need to really look at that Russell Court, because as I know, they cannot access, this is what it's. You go to the ambulance, there's so many routes, the ambulance can't get there, the fire department can't get there. So before we add anything new to the mix, I think we need to fix existing, because I don't think people realize that we have literally residents of jeopardy.
So. Michael also let us know that building permits have remained steady, and they've actually seen an uptick in the number of inspections that have been occurring. EDC is going to be starting work on the West Upton visioning plan. They retained Dodson Flinker, who did the Upton Center visioning plan. They're going to be doing that work. Public meetings haven't been scheduled yet. Once they are put it out for members of the community, including. Mike talked about his grant submissions, and Recreation identified that Kids at Play registration is open. The first day of Kids at Play is June 23rd. They're doing staff trainings right now, and they also hired a program director. This will be another staff person that is older that will be at the beach to be able to provide support for overseeing program beach activities over the summer. On June 10th is Government Day. This is when the third graders walk down to Town Hall. We introduce them, and then they go around to different departments and finish up at the community center. Also, and I'll send out the PDF at the community center. Library is putting out a summer reading program. But one of the things Matthew let us know was they're doing their first indoor mini golf event. This is going to be Monday, June 16th, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. at the library after hours. So this is going to be sponsored by the Friends of the Upton Library and so ages 5 and up, so fun for the whole family.
Questions, comments?
And at Kiwanis.
Right now, because of staffing constraints with DPW, they're still finalizing the permitting with conservation. And because of the proximity with Memorial Day and then also with Kids at Play, they're going to be sliding that to after Labor Day so we can get it done.
And were we going to consider whether we did it in the fall or if it was better to try to do it in March? Would there be any erosion over the winter when nobody's using it? So.
Yeah, damage that fan.
If the blizzards are gonna blow it back into the water, it might look better if we put it in March. I just know there were conservation issues this year with it, I believe.
But what are we doing with conservation? I mean, that's clearly something we could have anticipated.
So they're also working, it does because it's a water body, involves permitting with DEP, that issue, and because of other project management demands, DPW working with conservation, what we would want for the schedule. To have gotten it done
Or are we
for the beginning.
still waiting on the state and on our own conservation commission?
And DPW to find those things.
Public input, board member updates. Do we have any input from the public online? Can't see that far.
You're good listening.
And I'm directly into this. You're good?
And Joe Layden,
Okay.
read them up there.
Well, I'd just like to thank Lieutenant Mike Benjamin for 33 years of service to the town. So long time. We appreciate everything he's done. You know, I've said it before, a lot of people think it's easy to police in a small town, and I think it's one of the hardest things to do because you ultimately know every person you pull over or help or respond to. So we wish Mike all of the best in the next chapter of his life. May he enjoy it. And thank you very much.
Here.
Yep.
I'll second that.
And for those watching, he adamantly refused any type of recognition, so. But I hear he's gone to Maine, so he can't yell at me. So that's good. All right, so next up are our annual reappointments. Can I ask before we get into these, did everybody that's up, did they submit applications, Sue, or how did it work?
We sent you a list of ones that
Right, so,
we're still waiting on a couple. So,
but the ones in,
blue here all.
correct. So the ones in blue all apply.
An update, we're just gonna add them to the next list.
That's fine.
But they didn't necessarily like reapply. They just said that they're still interested in continuing
Yeah.
their service.
Oh,
They haven't-
fine.
Yeah,
they don't-
no,
they
they
don't-
just,
They don't reapply.
They showed their interest.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
just sent you an email responding, yes, I'm still interested.
that's what I wanted to make sure that we weren't appointing people who were thinking, well, I'm done, thank you, bye-bye.
Those are the responses.
Okay.
And then I sent you a list. Do not push to be.
We get to. I printed it, but. Yeah, like 41 or something. There you go. Going line by line, or how we have this?
I think we could do it.
So the term would end in 2026. So they're being appointed for 1 year, am I correct?
Summer, but you'll see the first, our first group is the 1 year and the next. Is it listed?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 years.
And then when you see the 2X, it's 2.
Okay, I see.
The Concom's all
Way of doing this.
No.
for 3 years as opposed to stagger.
I know.
One of the things, and I've mentioned it before, it's nice that we have, Sue as a fresh set of eyes to not sort of look at things that have become more of a, like, rote memory for us. But it doesn't mean that we have been necessarily doing it right, or because also we're relying on other boards and committees to sort of self-identify when members are up. Sue, working with Kathleen Byrne, Assistant Town Clerk, spent a large amount of time, and it was well worth it, making sure their records in the town clerk's office and our records matched up. And it did take some investigating and sort of going back and trying to understand it. And some of it is like, no, we're restarting, and making sure that town clerk and select board town manager's office are on the same page so that we can make sure that we have that cadence going forward. Some things we identified, like for disability, that because we don't have much information out there, like in my packet, I recommended holding off on that because I'd like to sort of relaunch that and identify the residents and the criteria specifically, because you do have criteria when it was adopted that somewhat got lost. And it might be good for disability just to say, let's do a relaunch of that at a follow-up meeting once we can get information on the website, really advertise, and make sure that we are attracting people that would qualify and meet those criteria.
Should we begin?
Certainly.
Could we do it? Like, as presented or something like that?
I mean, I have this list and I've already started a list for your next. If, if you.
So we could just basically do the
is
one.
To go
year
through
and-
the list, and if somebody has. Concerns or.
Everything I'm
Let's
making
do
it
it
look
that
like,
way.
it definitely seems weird to me to have all of our Concom appointed in 3-year increments.
Yeah,
at
because
once at the same
that
year,
would just
as opposed to
wipe
having it
everybody
staggered.
out simultaneously.
But that's not the whole.
That's a no.
Commission.
Commission.
No.
These are just literally.
These are just the people
Who
who
respond.
Not the ones that you may have board members.
Okay.
I've removed ones that are not up
Got it, okay.
reappointed.
Okay.
That's the answer to that question.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was just like, it would be weird. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right.
Got it.
Okay, is there, but there's a hold on the disability commission to kind of.
Christine Scott was the only one that had asked to be reapplied. To that, I just would say, like, let's hold up, let's bring it all together. And
Yes.
she's a very great resource, just so that we're not separating out appointments and all that stuff. And because one person can't act anyways.
Can't have a meeting with yourself because you don't have a quorum. So, yes, so, do I hear a motion that we appoint as, listed and written, with the exception of the disability commission, because we're going to is there such a word, revisit, thank you. I know re-review didn't sound right, revisit that, yes. Yes,
I'll move that we appoint individuals that have expressed interest on different committees.
Second motion.
all in favor?
Unanimous. To thank them for re-upping.
Yes, and to thank Sue and Kathleen for,
Recommend that you may see, but, say
disability,
Disability.
yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I did.
I did, I'm sure you did. Sounded like an echo after I said it.
Well, it isn't even listed on, right?
Well, it is, it's just, it's on the top of one of the pages.
Yeah, but it's not in blue.
No, it's not blue because, the third page.
So,
It's like the manager has an opportunity to review.
Exactly. Okay. Next up is the approval of the hold harmless agreement between the town of Upton and United Parish for the use of their parking.
Yeah. Like, because I printed out someplace.
Oh, there was one on the printer downstairs. Did you take it up?
no, I didn't. It's on top of the.
Yeah, I had 4 copies of, we received comments, this morning for some additional language that town council wanted in there. So let me just send that down to the printer.
It was on my desk.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
So town council has not, you submitted this plus the changes.
Town council recommended some additions just against, like, so that if something happened, that the town was not a party to. So,
So are we skipping this
And,
agenda item?
no,
Is-
just,
Is it,
it's very, because it's just a 1-pager, you'll see in track changes, it's a very simple paragraph.
okay, but has,
But you know,
Reverend
Right.
Emily Carl.
I sent it to them.
Was she fine with their changes?
I didn't get any comments yet.
I'd be hesitant to
they
sign
were
without their,
approving something without.
I mean, you know,
Well, we
we
can
can
always,
talk about it.
we can always approve and then if needed, come back to the board if they had issues.
Objections.
The main thing ends up being that they're gonna start doing work on Monday. We want to have it signed. And if need be, we can always schedule a impromptu meeting just to review any sort of tweaks that they had.
We get this before Emily Carl, before the end of the week. I see she
Yeah.
signed this on May 27th.
Yeah.
So. Last week, so.
Yep.
you that signs this,
Yes.
or you could send it to them for their review and if they agree to it, you could vote
Yes.
on their
You
review.
could do that, yeah.
Yeah, upon, I would feel better upon, because it is their parking lot, it is their property, upon their acceptance
Mhm.
of that you sign this.
Yeah.
And I must say, I read that red in track change 4 times too. They earned every penny of their legal degree. So yeah, as long as it's fine with them, I'm fine with.
Okay.
With us. So I would say, if I hear a motion,
Yeah.
then to that effect, I'd appreciate it.
I move that the board vote to authorize Joe, the town manager, to sign the Massachusetts Hold Harmless Agreement, attachment A, with the United Parish of Upton as edited and conditional on Reverend Emily Carl's approval and acceptance.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Town council engagement authorization.
Board's packet is the agreement. And I did have a discussion with Dave Element after regarding selecting the flat fee. So that's where in this agreement, you can see that as referenced as exhibit A.
What's as written, right, before what we saw, nothing
Right.
changed.
Nothing changed.
Okay, do I hear a motion?
I move that the board vote to authorize the town manager to execute the town of Upton fee agreement for legal services with E. Kellerman and Coster.
Second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Application for use of town common by the Upton Girl Scout yard sale. Girl Scout yard sale. It's not just Upton.
So, and we do have Dominique Ross with us online. Included in your board's packet is the application for the yard sale on June 7th. Dominique, as well as Chief Palmieri, had a good exchange as far as trying to narrow down where people could park and where we want to put up some cones to prevent people from trying to park along Main Street, just given the traffic volume as well as that Grove Street intersection and just concerns about safety. So per the board's policy, Chief Palmieri has signed it, and then it's up to the host board to authorize my signing of it. But in looking at the policy, it does identify that the board can, of course, approve these as they come in. They can also assign responsibility for these or as a blanket or on a case by case. But there had been an event, really one of the first ones that I even dealt with just about a month ago for use of art tables. And I had signed it sort of thinking it was very similar to the signs when people do an A-frame. That just comes to me in our review with police, fire, and all those things. Taking another look at the policy because of just all the policies, realized that missed the step as far as the chief reviews it and then sends it off to the board for review. So that's why it's in front of you here tonight.
That works for me.
Yeah.
Discussions, comments, questions?
Oh, I think it's great.
I think,
It'll be a great event.
yeah. And I think it keeps us in the loop when we authorize it, because then we know what's going on at the town level. Which is always helpful.
And I'm grateful for Ms. Frost's time that she spends curating a wonderful Girl Scouts program for the town of Upton.
And this is a huge undertaking, Dominique. Congratulations, and we wish you the best on Saturday. And may the sun shine on you.
Yes.
Yes, that is the wish.
Like, then
And
11
just so-
sun-
And Joe, just so you're aware, our request to use. the
Unfortunately,
res-
Dominic, we can't hear you.
Oh. Okay. Can you hear me now? No? Okay.
Dominic, we have all, if you can hear us, we have all new cameras and microphones and all sorts of fancy stuff, but unfortunately, you're the first person we've tried to listen to and it's not working.
I wonder how many other people tried to talk that we haven't heard. That's why nobody's coming up. Nobody's coming, you're ignoring you.
We do know it works.
So, Dominique, thank you very much for all of your hard work. We appreciate it. I wish you sunshine and good luck and raising much money for a very worthy cause. We appreciate that, everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, yeah. I hope you can hear us. Have we ever
I
wondered
think she can
if
hear.
anybody's listening to us, or if we're silent as well?
Because all these videos get processed by Paul Norton,
Okay.
we know exactly
So
when
people
there's
can
an
hear.
issue.
Okay, good. All right, so thank you, Dominic.
I move that the board vote to authorize the town manager to sign the application for the use of the town common on Saturday, June 7th, from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you. Project updates and discussion of future meeting.
Okay, so I gave you all a revised I was finalizing a spreadsheet of all the projects, sort of the master list that we had created and last looked at back at the end of 2024. But as so often the case, they got away and dealing with all sorts of fun topics that we didn't anticipate. So what I did is in this revised document, I added 4 items with the asterisk, including identifying that working to sort of finalize the electronic sign for outside. We're also finalizing landscaping service contract. And for that, I'll need a discussion about funding opportunities, which then that would be something that I would ask to be on the June 17th meeting.
Yes.
Now with engaging town council and with some of the emails that have gone around, a good introduction to new legal counsel may be looking at a town council training session, open meeting law and ethics for board members as well as staff. Also, one of the things we added, and this is why today just got away from a lot of us, Upton Community Center, you know, when we first adopted the policy, it was before things were up and running, and in some ways was followed on the model of this main hall and how we rent that out. You know, a great opportunity to let residents and people use the community center. We've had enough experience and we've run into enough issues that we'd like to, at a future meeting, get in front of the board. And this is myself, Dennis, Matt Bechtold, as well as Tanya, and just talk about maybe how things are going and maybe some tweaks that we want to make, and also seek guidance from the board on some of these items. When we have private events, we're finding that the amount of coordination actually involves multiple staff people to try to nail things down, last minute changes, last minute access, regardless of the fact that we tell people you need to be in 3 weeks in advance with all these things. So just want to sort of go over some of that stuff and also revisit some of the fee structures because, you know, for example, we have a new CBA with the DPW union. Our janitor is custodian and we moved into there. There are requirements under the union, but also we're finding that people are staying much longer. The condition that they're, say, leaving is not that great. We're thinking about maybe having some changes to the fee structure so that, for example, we have a cutoff of $250 And so when then they stay 2 hours later on a Sunday, the only thing we're capturing is basically Paul's hourly rate, which is double time on a Sunday. But there's some things, there's not an incentive to get them out. So there's some things that we internally have been discussing to come back before the board to talk about, hey, we're now 2 years in, here's some of the lessons learned, here's some changes that we'd like some input and hopefully incorporate into future policy amendments with the board. So I updated those lists to keep track of it over the course of the summer because they're really important in trying to keep track of it and make sure that we're also not burdening staff time with resolving some of these issues. And if we're collecting a fee that involves a large amount of coordination, we should make sure that at least we're not subsidizing it through our efforts.
Exactly. Questions, comments?
Do we think we should talk to the Upton Wood Angels people? I know you had a lot of, like, I can't tell if we're taking this seriously or not, because it just doesn't show up here. I'm like,
We are taking it seriously, but I think until, I mean, there's no fait accompli that they're going in there. So I know they're working on it, but I think until we get the structural integrity, I don't think we should be talking to anyone. You know, that's my feeling.
I can tell.
Well, it's, you know, they come before us, but, and then we get emails saying that, oh, we're bringing various people in. We don't know if the building is safe. I think it's come through both John Achu that people should not be in the building unless we make that determination. And I think June 12th, they're going in to start that determination. With any answer, it's a long day. With any luck, we have that at the end of the summer.
So
So
we probably won't be having any conversation at fall town meeting around Monday.
How long is it gonna take them?
They're going to be done about the second week of August with that structural analysis. And what I would anticipate is, because the warrant will close after Labor Day in September.
Yeah,
So then
like the way strategic projects work, and I know you know this, so I'm more just sort of like validating that I'm understanding this, right? Like, this doesn't have to be, you're talking like a serial, like this happens, then this happens, then this happens. If we wait until August to start talking to people that would be part of a public-private partnership, then we're not going to be ready to go for a November town meeting. We could do those things in parallel. We don't have to. I know I'm in the minority here. So I'm just
No,
trying
you're
to-
not the minority. I like what they're presenting. I like what they're thinking. However, it's not up to us. I do believe we're gonna be putting out a request for.
we will have to work together to
You know,
prepare a
they're
request for
not the only
proposal.
group going in. There are other considerations, I believe. That I think when if I'm correct, if I'm understanding the conversations I've had with Joe is, once the structural integrity and what we can and cannot do with that building, then a proposal will be sent out and applications will be received. Am I correct?
So if we can sort of take a step back and go back to the expression of interest. Within the expression of interest, we identified that the expression of interest is to be able to gauge ideas for the select board to consider. The next step after that will be the drafting of an RFP, and that really is in your hands, how narrow or broad you want to do it. The EOI allows for us to focus in, but that doesn't mean that the board can't say, you know what, we want to allow for other people, because now we're done with the environmental assessment and delineation to then include that. So you are right that there's two courses of action we can take. One is just dealing with the building itself. The other is working towards what that RFP looks like. And that timeline and calendar doesn't really need to line up with the physical building, because we can start that process. It's up to the board whether or not they want to award a RFP. And then there's negotiations, figure things all out. But one of the things that I had heard from you earlier discussions of the board was what ends up in that RFP, the division of funding, of responsibility. In some ways, it's going to be dependent on what we find the condition of that building. We're going to know within the next 30, 45 days if there's all of a sudden drop dead issues that, hey, look, Town of Upton, you have a major issue going on. That then puts a freeze on everything. But I think by the time we're halfway through the summer, we're going to know, even though it's not in a final report, we're going to know generally what are some of the issues, because they're going to be discussing it with us, and we're going to have them in front of the board to talk about the condition of the building. But it's that RFP side, that's up to, because that's not something EDC is going to be drafting.
And I guess the question for you, since you're orchestrating this, do we have a goal for November to go to town meeting, to have a town meeting vote on whatever it is we're planning to do with Holy Angels so that we can move this process along? Or is that not? I want to be, I've been saying that multiple times with the board agreeing with me, and I'm not seeing action.
I
I'm seeing
think my
deferment.
understanding is.
So I want to make sure that if I misunderstood and that's not a goal, that's fine. That building can sit there for 20 years. That's fine. But if we want to do something, we have to take action.
I think,
But we can't, excuse me, we can't take action unless we get a report from criteria.
that's what I was gonna say, like, we
Okay.
can't, I
So
think.
November is not the goal for us.
I do think it is, Brett, but the thing is we can't put the cart before the horse if the cart isn't stable. And I think we need to find out if the building is stable, and that was it. Once the building's stable, then we can go to town meeting and say, okay, the building is stable. We have been told it needs X, Y, and Z. And we can determine whether or not the town wants to do X, Y, and Z. I get a
So what
public,
is that goal?
it's not an article yet because we don't know. What if they come in and say, okay, you can fix that building, it's gonna be $15 million. Well, I don't know. How do you know? We don't know.
And
I mean,
then the project is dead in the water. That's what happens.
But I just say, we still have to do an RFP. It doesn't mean that they automatically go into the Holy Angels because you have got to get it down.
I have no preconceived notions about that. I
Okay.
totally agree with you.
Because it's about appropriating money. You have to have-
Well, that's my point. Like, if we're gonna go to, like, what is the article in November look like? And what actions do we need to take in order to have that article take place?
I don't think we
Right.
know until we know the condition of the building. Am I correct, Joe?
So
I would argue that we as a group need to know that in a very clear way. Otherwise, we're never going to get anywhere. So the path from where we sit today to a warrant article that says something that is taking that building to the next step, it's not going to happen if we don't plan and if we're not crystal clear about what's required.
Well,
So
but
for
we can't
the-
plan without knowing.
So
That's
for
the
example,
point
if we
there.
just use the 2019 as an example, you had basically three levels of estimates. You had securing the envelope, you had some structural changes, then you had basic outfitting. Coming out of this, we know there's going to be the need for immediate repairs. We're going to have to fix the bell tower, and we're going to have to look to see if is there anything immediately on the roof. If there's things physically with the envelope, say the eastern elevation that faces Center Brook, that will be something that's identified. Then you have the larger context as far as what is the other cost, maybe things that don't have to be done right away, but then maybe are going to need to be done. And then you have the outfitting, the electric, plumbing, fire suppression, all those things. I think as far as one action item for town meeting will be the immediate preservation of the envelope to make sure no further damage gets happen. The RFP doesn't require going in front of town meeting. That's all here. We already have the authorization from town meeting to dispose of the property or to enter into lease agreements. So we don't need to go to town meeting to say if RFP, they were the only response and we wanted to work with them on moving forward with that public public-private partnership. We don't require a town meeting to do that. My only concern
Where would the
is,
money come from?
so for preserving the outside of the building, making sure
For
that
any
it's
of
a
it.
public-private, that we have to work out with them. That's
But if.
not
but
gonna
if the-
be able
but
to be
if the-
something
but
for
if the
fall.
town-
And the
Okay,
reason,
so do you remember when you and I had talked about?
Yep.
Like, it would be, the next step would be you'd go through this process, you'd validate the structure. We in parallel look at what some of the opportunities are for potentially using the space, and we've got clarity, and we go to town meeting in November and we say, hey, we did all this research, it's gonna cost $2.5 million to do it. So 40% or 30% of that is the design build, that comes out to $350,000. So do you want to approve $350,000 to renovate the church, or do we just want to sell it? Or have it demolished, or sort of give up control of the church? And I just want to
Yeah,
let.
I
the town vote
understand what
and
you're
stop.
saying, yeah.
Right, but if we
I
just
think
never
we know
do it-
in a month they're going in June 12th. We should have answers June, July, beginning of
yeah,
August.
middle of July, you're gonna have some of those rough
Okay, so-
numbers.
Middle of July. Okay, somewhere.
Okay, but I guess part of my,
Schedule?
yeah, part of my
Let's
point,
put it
part
on-
of my point is,
It wasn't
that's why I raised it.
Okay, good.
It's not listed on here anywhere. It's not on here anywhere, which is why I brought it up again. It wasn't on here last time either. So it's not, conversations aren't gonna happen if they're not on this list, right? So,
Yes and no, because that is an active project that is ongoing. These are specific task items. We can easily add it on there, but that's not going to, I don't think it's gonna
July
change.
15th, right, look, all right, we just approved July 1st, July 15th for meetings. Let's,
right,
status report, update, future use of Holy Angels on July 15th.
Sounds good.
You're welcome. But when we get this at like the last minute.
raising the point.
Don't always
Raising the
wait.
point that it should be a conversation.
And you know what, Brett? Anytime you want something on the agenda, raise the point because
I have
We-
always, I have always said 100%, that's one of the things I love about you. Like, you have never, ever been anything but gracious and open to putting anything on any agenda.
I am, because you know what? We don't decide, people
The
decide.
people.
And I say that, and that's my belief.
Yep.
And
I
I joke,
appreciate it.
I like to think I'm in charge, but I'm not.
It's all the same way.
It's only a pipe dream on my part, but that's why we get the big bucks.
Thank you.
No, just really bring it up because, and everything, you know, it's like a study, you don't put it on the shelf. Everything has to be living, moving and changing.
Yeah,
And, you know, if something pops into your head at 3 a.m, don't call me, but feel free to text me.
yeah,
I'll see you
you
in the morning.
text me.
Feel free to text me, I'll see you in the morning. So
Is it
Thank you.
discussion on use?
discussing, this, can you tell, it's only Tuesday. It's been a very long week already. Yes,
Well,
discussion
use Update or something.
of, yes, a structural and use update. Because I just don't see how we can do one without knowing. And if they say, look, we have to remove the whole left side of the steeple and X, Y, and Z, we all know where we're going with that. It's not gonna.
If we're gonna have to redo the steeple though, it's gonna be awesome because we're gonna be able to redo it the way it was originally built instead of this little.
Well, there's a piece missing, right?
Yeah, the top.
Yeah, they
It
did
used to be
try.
a steeple.
Not a steeple, it's a double. I'm glad we don't have to.
And once you say that, you can't even see it. Like, once
No.
you look at it, you realize,
It was
oh, it used to
kind
be
of
a
like the
really
Christmas
pretty,
lights.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was impressive with the old pictures, it really was, you know? But then again, you know, all right. Moving
Good.
on. Are we done with updates and future topics?
Got it.
Okay. Town manager annual evaluation. Can we do that in executive session?
No. So there's two things. One, back on the 21st, Sandy had sent out an email with a fillable form for answering those questions and asking them to be returned back. So we have to do that process. Annual evaluations are done in open session. The only thing that is an executive session is under the terms of the contract. there is a paragraph about merit or market rate adjustments. That discussion happens in executive session. So sort of realistically, probably need to just kick this to the next meeting.
Because I didn't understand why we would send the form to Sandy. I thought we're going to talk to you.
She consolidates all of, so you all would grade me simply what you all think. She then consolidates that and the comments into one document. And then that gets discussed during open.
Well, there's a conflict.
I'd love to know which one you're thinking about.
Because she reports to Joe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's disclosure forms under the conflict of interest law, general law, chapter 268A, section 714.20. And it's in the conflict between if town manager and the HR comes under town manager. There's a conflict.
So I guess one of the,
Anything to do with compensation.
Yeah.
Period.
but that's where this isn't compensation. This is the evaluation. These are just responding.
Well, it's.
So I would just ask of the board. This is the process that was laid out for Blythe and Derek in the first year I was here. So what's, so my first question is sort of what changed? Second, if there is a conflict with the HR director doing an HR function, who then does it fall to?
Who's gonna do it?
Then that would be realistically, that would be by default going to town council because I oversee everyone.
Right.
So-
That have to be one of the three of us.
So
It says, however, the select board ultimately has the authority to negotiate and act or town manager.
and that would be an executive session on the compensation. It's the evaluation side. So the other option is for members to provide it to the chair and for the chair then to synthesize those comments. I just would point out that this was a process that has been done now for the last 5-6 years. So.
Do you remember, Derek, we did anything in open session with Derek?
I always remember sharing the annual updates with Sandy and she consolidated them and we reviewed them.
Derek, and we discussed all the benefits.
Yeah, that was more like the contract stuff, like sort of the deep contract stuff as opposed to the annual review process. Like, cause I hear you on the contract stuff was definitely
Yeah,
like.
and I'd agree,
We're gonna
I'd
directly-
agree with you on that.
Yeah.
This is about all the other elements, communication, leadership, project management,
Yeah.
fiscal
I
response.
just remember filling out that like, it's basically the scorecard and then sending the scorecard results to Sandy. And then she would consolidate them into one thing. And send it back to the three of us. But I have no portion of rights, whoever, I don't care who does it.
All right, well, I didn't fill out. I've never done it before and I really thought, I was like, well, I'm not filling this out because I think this needs to be done in executive session.
It doesn't, it's all
Okay.
Publix. It's all,
Now,
one of the nights.
My first rodeo.
Only I can understand the conflict being about providing benefit or compensation to Sandy for her to take any action. That would be executive session through all of us. However, in my experience as well as knowledge, there would not be a conflict in the board filling out that form, sending it to Sandy for her to consolidate, to then distribute back to the board that consolidated evaluation.
Do you remember doing that last year?
We didn't do it, we should do it last year, though.
Because we just did the contract last year.
But I've never.
Yeah.
Because when I saw both, I was like, that's why you heard what I just said. Are we supposed to do this in our executive? Because I didn't know, and honestly, I didn't fill out to send it to Sandy because I thought, well, I think we have to talk about it. in executive session. So I just, nobody told me it was due, so I didn't do it because we were gonna do it today. Incorrect. Hey, this is what happens when you make somebody the chair.
So we'll hunt this till next time.
Until next time,
Yep.
sure.
So, and then,
And those of us who got turned it in.
Yeah.
and then I'll just, this is a hard copy. I had previously
Great.
Yeah, I saw that.
given you the evaluation, so it was other materials, so.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
it's back on for
This is your
July
self-assessment.
is, are we next?
self-assessment, but also sort of market information.
Okay. Okay, so we'll skip that. And approval of meeting minutes for May 27th. Did everybody have a chance to read the meeting minutes?
Yep.
The only question I had is under town manager report and updates, it says kickoff meeting scheduled for May 29th under Holy Angels to finalize the bidding scope. It wasn't just that. It was, what, am I correct?
Let's take it right up.
Yeah. I mean, it might have been a summary. If everyone's fine with that, I'm fine with it.
It was,
It was a
I
lot more in depth.
would recommend changing.
Yeah.
Hold on for a quick second.
To finalize scope would be fine, but it wasn't just the painting. It was,
Yeah.
my memory is more inclusive.
Right, because we were talking about the oil tank and all
Right.
the other stuff that had to be
Right.
done was part of that conversation to
Yeah.
prioritize. Right.
Yeah,
Is that the town manager's report?
Yes. Yeah, so he might have just given himself a shorthand of. So if we take out the word painting,
I might have been.
okay. Well, we could just end it,
If it's not. doesn't
And
make
it- and
grammatical Sense.
it's,
Yeah, exactly.
well, why don't we just, take out on line 25 and I'll give you the
So
suit.
just. I'm
To
just trying to
finalize paving scope.
get to them.
Yeah, I printed them. That was my challenge.
That is fine. So.
So
Yeah.
just end it, yeah,
Okay.
accept them as amended and just take out the words to finalize paving scope. And it kicked off on May 29th.
We're good to go.
Okay, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
I move that the board vote to approve meeting minutes for May 27, 2025 as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. So then we don't go into executive session?
No, we don't.
Okay. That can be pushed. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn the meeting of June 3rd, 2025 at 8:48.
No, 7:28.
Oh, 7.
Can you
Wait,
believe it?
2
I
minutes.
second it.
All in favor? Aye, unanimous.
Look at us.